Hey everybody, and welcome back to Sip and Talk. Ready for another deep dive today?
Always, especially with you.
Well, perfect, because today we are taking a deep dive into a recent White House press briefing that was chock full of just some wild stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah. First of all, Happy Lunar New Year to everyone out there.
Oh, yeah. Happy Lunar New Year.
Hope you're having a great year of the rabbit so far.
Absolutely.
But anyway, this press briefing really touched on everything, it seems like, from aviation safety to a resurgence of the COVID lab leak theory.
Oh, wow.
And even some really strong statements about immigration.
Really?
Yeah, it's just another day at the office for the Trump administration, it seems.
So where do we even begin with all of that?
Well, let's start with something that really, I think, hit home for a lot of people, and that was the tragic air collision that happened, recently.
Yeah, that was awful. 67 lives lost at Reagan National.
Yeah, just a horrible reminder of how quickly things can go wrong, even with all the safety protocols we have in place.
So what did the briefing say about it?
Well, the investigation is still ongoing, but Trump wasted no time in taking action.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he sent a memorandum calling for an immediate assessment of the FAA and specifically their hiring practices.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he called out something that he calls DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring practices.
Okay, so is he essentially saying that DEI initiatives have compromised safety standards at the FAA?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, and a lot of people are saying that's a pretty bold claim to make.
Yeah, it is. I mean, some argue that these types of diversity initiatives are actually really helpful for creating a workforce that's more well-rounded.
Right. They say that can lead to better, decision-making, problem-solving.
Exactly. But then on the other hand, I mean, safety is obviously the top priority.
Yeah, and if anything is compromising that, then that's a huge concern.
Yeah, it is. I think it's important to separate the politics from the facts here, though.
Absolutely.
Like, is there any actual evidence that DEI is negatively impacting safety?
Right. We need to let the investigation play out. But, there's another kind of wrinkle in this story.
What's that?
Trump also mentioned that the helicopter involved was flying way too high.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like way above the 2,000-foot limit.
Yeah.
He even posted about it on Truth Social.
Oh, wow. So it really seems like there's so many layers to this investigation.
Right.
Potential human error and equipment malfunctions, and then also just air traffic control procedures in general.
For sure. I mean, this is going to be really interesting to see what the official findings are.
Yeah.
But all right, let's switch gears here a little bit and talk about another pretty hot-button issue, which is immigration.
Okay.
Trump is back with his, really hard-line stance on immigration, and he's not holding back this time around.
So what's the latest?
Well, the very first bill that he signed into law was called the Laken and Riley Act.
Okay.
It was named after a young couple that was tragically murdered by an illegal immigrant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this act basically makes it mandatory for illegal immigrants that are accused of certain crimes to be detained.
Okay, so like what kinds of crimes are we talking about?
So things like theft, assault, or any crime that, results in death or serious injury.
Right.
So it's a much stricter approach to detention and deportation than we've seen previously.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it seems like it's meant to send a message about the consequences of illegal immigration.
Right.
But this isn't the only action that Trump is taking, is it?
No, it's not. Things actually get even more intense with a new memorandum that he signed to detain illegal immigrants at Guantanamo Bay.
Guantanamo Bay.
Guantanamo Bay.
Wow, that's a bold move.
It is. It's definitely a bold move. And using a facility that's associated with, some of the most controversial detention practices in history is going to spark a lot of outrage and a lot of legal challenges.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. It raises all sorts of questions, too, about human rights and due process.
Right, and the potential for abuse.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a major, major escalation in Trump's immigration policy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, for sure. But let's move on to another topic here that kind of caught my attention, and that's that COVID-19 lab leak theory.
Oh, yeah, that was a bombshell.
It was. Didn't the briefing kind of touch on that as well?
Yeah, they did. The CIA is now officially saying that they believe COVID-19 originated from a lab leak in Wuhan, China.
Wow. This is something Trump's been saying for years now.
Right. It's kind of like everyone was so quick to dismiss him and call it a conspiracy theory. And now it's like, well, hold on a second.
Yeah.
He might have been right.
It's interesting, though. Why is this coming out now, like years after the pandemic began?
Right.
Like, what's changed? What are the implications of this?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. Some are saying it's a strategic move to put pressure on China.
Oh, okay.
especially with tensions already kind of running high between us.
Right.
Others are saying it's about accountability.
Yeah.
Like holding those who are responsible for the pandemic accountable for what happened.
Right. Well, whatever the reason, this is definitely going to have some ripple effects globally.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, this could impact trade relations, diplomatic negotiations.
Right. It could fuel even more distrust between the U.S. and China.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a whole new chapter in this COVID saga has opened up.
Absolutely.
And we're all just waiting to see what happens.
But, there was a lot more to this briefing than just those big headlines.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Trump touched on a ton of other issues like education reform, student reading scores. He even mentioned a meeting with the CEO of NVIDIA, but didn't give any details.
It's like he's trying to cover all the bases here.
Right.
What stood out to you the most from those other things he mentioned?
Well, his emphasis on school choice and banning critical race theory in the classroom definitely caught my attention.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like education is going to be a big focus for him this term.
For sure. That was a theme in his first term as well.
Right. And it's definitely something that's resonating with, a large part of the population.
Yeah, it is. But what about those record low student reading scores?
Oh, yeah. How could I forget about the nation's report card?
Great.
Yeah, he didn't shy away from that at all. He actually held like a roundtable discussion on it.
Oh, wow.
He acknowledged the problem and said we need reform, and he pointed to school choice and parental involvement as the keys.
Right. Well, it's a complex issue. No easy answers there.
No, definitely not.
But it's interesting how he's framing all of these issues.
Yeah, how so?
It's all about empowering parents, giving them more control over their kids' education.
Right.
It aligns with that whole, limited government message of his.
And then there's that whole NVIDIA meeting.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that. What do you think is going on there?
I have no idea. He didn't release any details.
Is it about AI? Is it about chip manufacturing?
Who knows? But it's definitely intriguing.
Yeah, it really is. It's like he's playing chess.
Right.
Like making all these strategic moves that we don't quite understand yet.
Exactly.
But they could have, major consequences down the line.
Absolutely. Yeah. And hey, don't forget about some of the international stuff that came up.
Oh, right. Like what?
Well, the Panama Canal, for one.
Oh, yeah. What about that?
Trump seems pretty fired up about the Chinese Communist Party's influence there.
Yeah, it sounds like he sees it as a threat to U.S. interests.
Right. And he's not just talking about it. He's actually taking action.
Oh, really?
He sent Senator Rubio down to Panama to start a conversation.
Oh, wow.
Especially given that the Panamanian president said that renegotiating the canal is impossible.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty bold move.
It does. It's shaping up to be quite the diplomatic showdown, and it's just another example of Trump's willingness to challenge the status quo.
Right.
Assert American dominance on the world stage.
And what about the whole Russia-Ukraine thing?
Oh, yeah, that's still ongoing. The ceasefire that he brokered between Israel and Hamas is holding, but things are still really tense over there.
Yeah, it's a powder keg for sure.
And with Trump being so unpredictable, it's really hard to know what's going to happen next.
He really does keep everyone on their toes.
For sure.
Yeah.
But his approach to international relations is very closely tied to his domestic agenda.
Drake, how so?
Well, take his decision to implement tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China.
Oh, yeah. Those tariffs, 25% on Canada and Mexico and 10% on China.
And he's not backing down, even though they've threatened to retaliate.
Wow. It's like that America First policy in action.
Right. He's using economic leverage to try to, force these countries to make concessions.
On things like trade and immigration.
Exactly. Even if it means disrupting global markets and straining those alliances.
Well, and his reasoning is that they haven't done enough to stop the flow of fentanyl into the U.S.
Right, which is obviously a major driver of the opioid crisis here.
Yeah, it's a really complex issue.
It is, and there's no easy solution. But he's framing it as a matter of national security and public health.
Which gives him more leeway to take those drastic measures.
Right, it's all part of his strategy to appeal to his base and project this image of strength and decisiveness.
Even if it means alienating allies.
But what about his approach to energy policy?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. How does he reconcile being such a supporter of the American energy industry with his stance on climate change, which he's called a hoax in the past?
That is a great question. He's definitely sent some mixed messages on this issue.
Yeah, he has.
On the one hand, he's rolled back environmental regulations and really promoted fossil fuels.
Right.
Which really aligns with that America First energy independence agenda of his. On the other hand, he's also invested in clean energy technologies, and he's even talked about, protecting our natural resources.
So where does he stand?
It's hard to say, honestly. It's possible that he sees climate change as more of a political issue than a scientific one.
Oh, interesting.
And he's playing to his base, which is generally pretty skeptical of the science.
That's a good point. It's like he's walking a tightrope here,
Right.
trying to balance all these different interests.
Yep. Exactly.
And using rhetoric that appeals to everyone.
Yeah, it can be really hard to keep up with all of his different positions and everything he's saying.
It really can be.
And-
That's Trump for you, always keeping us guessing, challenging conventional wisdom.
But I think it's pretty clear that his second term is going to be just as eventful as his first, if not more so.
Oh, absolutely. It's like we've just watched the opening act,
Right.
and now we're all just on the edge of our seats waiting to see what happens next.
It's a roller coaster.
It really is. But that's what makes politics so fascinating, right?
It does. It's a constant source of intrigue and debate, and honestly, sometimes a little bit of chaos.
I think we need to take a break here for a second.
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking that myself.
My coffee cup is empty.
Mine too.
Mm,
All this political talk really makes me thirsty.
it really does.
All right, so we're back.
We are. And I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into this really intense White House press briefing.
It has been a whirlwind tour of Trump's agenda here, for
Yeah.
sure. It has. We've covered aviation, safety, immigration, that whole COVID lab leak theory, international trade disputes.
It seems pretty clear that Trump's back and ready to make a statement with this second term.
Yeah, he's not shying away from controversy, that's for sure. He's ruffling a lot of feathers,
Yeah.
both domestically and internationally.
But the thing that's fascinating to me is how he's kind of weaving all of these seemingly separate issues together
Right.
into this narrative that really resonates with his base.
Yeah, he's tapping into these anxieties about safety and security, both physical and cultural, and he's positioning himself as this protector of traditional values.
The champion of the everyday American.
Right. So what does all this mean for the future of the United States?
I don't know. That's the question that keeps me up at night, honestly. It's clear that he's trying to cement his legacy as this transformative figure, someone who really reshaped the political landscape.
Right. But at what cost? I mean, his policies and his rhetoric are extremely derisive, and he seems very determined to push the boundaries of executive power.
It's a risky gamble, and we don't know how it's going to turn out.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
He could end up polarizing the country even further, or he could actually succeed in bringing about this new era of American dominance that he keeps talking about.
It's a fascinating and unsettling time, that's for sure.
It really is. We're witnessing this huge clash of ideologies here.
And it's playing out on this global stage, with implications for international relations, trade, the future of democracy.
Well, on that note, I think we need to switch gears here a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All this political talk has got me thinking about something a little bit more fun.
Me too.
So tell me, what do you have planned for our listeners today who maybe want to escape from this political intensity for a little bit?
Well, after a deep dive like this, I think everyone deserves a little escape.
Agreed.
So I highly recommend checking out this YouTube channel called Mickytolife.
Oh, that's a good one.
If you're looking for a break from all the drama and you want something relaxing and inspiring, Mickytolife is the perfect antidote.
What's so special about it?
Well, it's all about travel, adventure, and whiskey.
Oh, I'm sold.
Yeah.
You had me at travel, but the whiskey is just a bonus.
Micky has this amazing way of capturing the beauty of different cultures and landscapes, and he does it all while sipping on some of the finest whiskeys out there.
Sounds like the perfect way to unwind after one of our deep dives. I'm adding that to my watch list for sure.
But before we go, any final thoughts on this press briefing?
Just that I think it's pretty clear that we're in for a wild ride these next 4 years.
Buckle up, folks.
Yeah, Trump is back and he's not holding anything back.
It's going to be a bumpy but fascinating journey.
Well said. And on that note, we're raising a glass to all of our listeners out there. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Sip and Talk.
Cheers.
Until next time, keep sipping, keep talking, and keep those minds open.